Now, I've already recounted a lot of my experiences at West Virginia University in my early years that started in 1967. But there were a series of events that came together that paved my way to go to California, and I think it's a pretty good story. Now, in the fall of 1972, I'd already gotten my bachelor's degree in applied percussion, and I was in my second semester as a composition major. In that semester, it was announced that the Pittsburgh Symphony would be coming into residence the following semester. Sometime, I think, was in February. And that if you were a composition major, graduate student, you could write a piece for the orchestra and they would read it. And if you were a graduate student and had a concerto ready, you could play the concerto with the orchestra during a reading session. And I thought, why not kill two birds with one stone and write a concerto? Now, I was a pretty inexperienced composer. I never had written anything for orchestra. In fact, I'd hardly written anything at all. But I'd been studying orchestration and arranging from Don Wilcox, who was a masterful teacher and made me feel very confident that I had command of writing for these instruments. Besides, what did I have to lose? As far as playing the timpani, it was hard to judge how good I was because there aren't that many timpanists around to compare yourself to. But the previous year, the university had Aaron Copland come as artist in residence, composer and conductor. And we were doing his organ symphony, and it has a wicked timpani part in it. And so naturally, I spent a long time making it work so I wouldn't embarrass myself when he was there. And we played through most of it, and then we went on a break, and I'm sitting there studying the part just to make sure I've got the next thing ready. And somebody taps me on the back, and I turn around, and it's Aaron Copland. He says, "I don't get that part played that well in New York or Boston. You really do shake a mean stick," is how he put it. Well, naturally, I was very flattered, and it gave me a great sense of confidence that I was a pretty good timpanist. So writing a concerto for myself didn't seem that far-fetched. Now, actually, the biggest challenge for me was not writing the concerto or learning to play it. It was getting it done in time. I was a graduate assistant in percussion, and I was a full-time college student taking all these classes, plus playing concerts and the usual things we do as music majors. So I had to write music every spare minute that I had. And fortunately, Reed Bingham came in and helped me copy parts. We wouldn't have done it without it. So the big day came. Reed and I copied music maybe all night, I don't know. And my biggest focus going in there was, can I get this part played correctly while the orchestra is playing? So we start, and this part that I had written is pretty wicked, so I'm concentrating and I'm playing it, and all this music I had in my head is coming alive around me, and it was so intense. There was no other experience I've ever had in my life like that. Was over, the audience clapped, and somebody in the violin section said, "Welcome to Hines Hall." I had no idea what that meant. And then the conductor came over and said, "Would you like to come to Pittsburgh and play this with us next year for a children's concert?" And I said, "Well, of course." And I am just stunned. And if it hadn't been for the fact that they recorded the piece, the guys up in the recording booth did it for me, I would never have known what that piece sounded like. Anyway, I didn't have a lot of time to celebrate because the percussion ensemble was going to be playing a gig that night, and I had to get ready. It turned out that that very evening, the college was hosting a dinner in honor of the symphony, and we went and performed. Now, the guest speaker that evening, who I would not have heard if the percussion ensemble wasn't performing for the dinner, was from the National Endowment for the Arts, and the focus of his talk was on a new series of grants that the endowment was coming out with for composers to do original works. So after his talk, I went up and introduced myself, and I said I'd written a piece for the orchestra, and he said, "Oh yeah, I heard all about that. It was quite a sensation." I said, "Well, could I apply for one of these grants?" He says, "Oh, you should." So I got the paperwork to fill out, and I decided that a good idea would be to write a symphony based on East African music, something I knew no one else had ever done. And I had some expertise because of Phil Faini bringing back the drums and teaching us all how to play that music. It was a topic I was fascinated with anyway. Now, you'll remember that when I played the timpani concerto, we recorded it. So I had a good recording of that. When the marching band read my Appalachian Uprising, I got a recording of that. You may have remembered I talked about that percussion quartet, 2 and 3 for 4. We recorded that then. So I had 3 pieces that I had written on tape. So when I applied for the grant to the National Endowment for the Arts, I had the ability to splice and put tapes together and send one in, and then started to wait, because I think the deadline had been May 31st, but you didn't find out until January 1st of 1974. And in the fall semester, I realized, you're going to finish up school in May. What are you going to do? So my solution when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life was to figure out who I would like to work with in Los Angeles or New York and send them tapes of my stuff. Well, I was really enamored with 2 people. One was Creed Taylor, who had a record producing company in New York, who produced all of this really wonderful jazz stuff, and I just loved it. So I sent him 1 tape. And then on the West Coast was this crazy jazz band leader named Don Ellis. And he would put things out called Electric Bath and Strawberry Soup, and it would be in 33/16 time. And it was just fascinating. And I really wanted to play and write music for him. So I sent him a tape. Well, Creed Taylor sent my tape back and said, I'm sorry, the speed of your tape is too slow for my machines. Redo it and send it to me later. I actually got a call on the telephone from Don Ellis. Says, man, this stuff is pretty interesting. Why don't you think about coming out and writing something for the band? Now, at that very same time, the percussion ensemble was going to New York to play on the Today Show. And I could say to Don, you know, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be on the Today Show. You can see me play, which really gave me all kinds of status in his mind to do that. And on January the 1st, I find out that I've got this grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. And at UCLA, they have this huge ethnomusicology archives with music from Uganda that I can listen to all these field recordings and actually use it to supplement what I'm using for material to write the symphony. So you see that going to West Virginia University, being a percussion major with Phil Faini, learning African music, meeting Aaron Copland, studying with Don Wilcox, having the Pittsburgh Symphony come in when they came in, playing for the dinner that night and hearing the guy from the National Endowment for the Arts give the speech, applying for the grant, getting a call back from Don Ellis, who was forming a band at that time, and playing on the Today Show, all lined up so that the road was paved for me to go to California.